All right, hello and welcome everybody to another fantastic event here at Nobody Studios. My name is Barry O'Reilly, I'm Chief Incubation Officer. And today I'm delighted to be joined by my partner in crime, Mr. Mark McNally. Mark, how you doing?
Hey there, Barry. Good to see you again.
Yeah, great. Well, look, these events have been a fantastic way for us to regularly reach out to nobodies all over the world, people who've been following our story, understanding what we're doing in the studio. And this is a different kind of special where we're actually going to talk a little bit today about bringing more people into the studio and attracting even more fantastic members to the merry bunch of nobodies that we've managed to accumulate over the last 2.5 years. So today is going to be focused on sharing more about what we're looking for in both chief technology and product officers for the studio. We're excited for those opportunities to be available for people. We'll talk a lot about what we're actually looking for, like what are some of the attributes we think are the people who'll help us succeed and be successful in these roles. But before we sort of dive into that, maybe for a couple of people who maybe this could be the first time they're learning about the studio, can you share a little bit just about our origin story and how this all began in a shed, probably about 25 meters from where you're sitting right now?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, just around the corner here. Um, yeah, it's look the result. The studio is a result of a 25-year career of my own of 14 different startups, with every end of the spectrum you can imagine, from complete and total failure and therapy, and on the other end, IPO and glorious parades in this middle of town square. Um, a lot of lessons along the way. I've been very passionate about just the power of startups to create something that doesn't exist, yet. And the more rational, the better. I think that there's nothing more electrifying than being able to say this should exist in the world. It's going to make the world a better place. And if we get it right, we're going to make a bunch of money and actually have a chance of making that happen. And so I love that. I've been doing it my whole life, but somewhere along the way, I started collecting these lessons and feeling like at some point there's gonna be time to stop and consolidate all these things and create a different structure that hopefully gets it right for a different scale. And that's what I did about 4 years ago. I actually went through a process of looking at every company I've been a part of and wrote down lessons. And I interviewed a bunch of friends and a bunch of other colleagues that had similar backgrounds, and just kind of started to form this thesis of what it would look like to create a machine that allowed you to build companies without a lot of the inefficiencies that I've been dealing with 25 years of my career, and building kind of a team and a skill set that would be unparalleled and solve a lot of problems that entrepreneurs have, like access to capital and expertise and partners and scalability mechanisms. And so, that combined with the fact that about 4 years ago, the market was going through what I call the unicorn party. Everybody thought that everything that was going to be created was a unicorn. And, in our very first pitch deck, we have a slide that says, good luck with that. And today on the market, there's 862 unicorns looking to be funded or acquired. And I think Crunchbase's article said, good luck with that. So, I think that we believe that the market's going to a spot where you're going to have more rapid builds, faster companies, companies that go from concept to in the market with revenue and probably exit in less than 24 months. And in the old days, you'd think about building a company for 10 or 15 years. I think at the speed of innovation today and technology, that's sounding really, really risky. And so we're trying to fill a part of the market that is really where the overfunding of companies left this dearth in the market where there's not early stage, high quality companies. And we're just trying to be excellent at that.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing, right? And as you say, this has been going for over 2.5 years. Started off in your garage around the corner. There's obviously been some amazing highlights over that time, but specifically in the last year, the company, I think, there's been some really phenomenal moments for us along the way, where we've obviously, built up a team, have a great portfolio now of startups. We've teams all over the world, investors in 55 different countries. We've been through crowdfunding events. We've been through angel raising. We're on the cusp now of starting a Series A. What have been some of those highlights for you, if you think about one or two, over the last sort of 12 months specifically? And I know for me, one of those great moments that we weren't expecting was actually getting recognized in a number of publications as a top 10 venture studio. I think we always said we were surprised by that, and we have to earn it every day, which is again another fantastic moment for us. But for yourself, what have been some of the one or two standout moments, do you think, on the journey from the last few months?
Yeah, I mean, I think you grabbed a few that I would think of. I mean, the crowdfunding was something that we had actually been speaking about almost since inception. Being crowd infused is something that we say beyond capital. It comes to how we source ideas, how we test our thinking, how we launch our products, all the way to including influencers in our cap table and being part of the companies we create. So, influence is something that's different from how a lot of people think. We actually try to stitch it into our DNA from the beginning, but it also became one of these kind of these things where you've been talking about it and thinking about it for so long that I think getting it done, there was like a couple different phases of like psychological reward there. One was like, God bless it, we finally got it done. But then after we got over that hump, there was a couple other things that I noticed that were just really stood out from that experience. One, every welcome email came out from me as chief nobody. So I got to see, hundreds of responses from these investors. And some of them were one-liners and some of them were, multiple paragraphs. But, seeing a, multiple paragraph response from somebody in Costa Rica who decided to put in $500 into the crowdfunding and why they did it and who they are and what their backgrounds are and their passions, what they think they can bring to the studio, and genuine, gratefulness for being offered the opportunity to be exposed to venture capital investments in a way that they hadn't been before, was just one of the most gratifying moments, of my career. And this journey in particular, but then watching those folks galvanize after the fact. We just did an all hands about a month ago. We had 156 new nobodies on the call, from all parts of the globe. And it was just that moment where you're like, yeah, this is why we did it. It was never going to be about capital. I mean, sorry to give you a letdown here, but crowdfunding is not the most efficient place to go find capital. But we did it for the network and we 100% resulted in that. So that was great. I'd say the second part of crowdfunding, which I think we knew, but we never really spoke about it, so it surprised ourselves. There was a whole other branding impact of doing the crowdfunding, right? And so since then, I'd get on calls the last 3 months and I'd start to say, oh, let me tell you a little background about Nobody Studios. And people would be like, oh, no, I know all about you guys. I've been watching you guys for 6 months. And that's the first time we've heard that. So people have been watching us, seeing what we're putting out, seeing how we think. They seem to have a lot of resonance in the first minute of a phone call. And so there's this bonus effect of we're probably one of the biggest brands in venture studio space worldwide. And that should help us with talent and influence, capital, and a lot of stuff we intend to do in the future.
Yeah, no, it's pretty special. I think even seeing people like putting merch on and taking photographs and sharing them all over the world, and these like 900 plus new investors in 55 different countries around the globe. And I think the global aspect is probably one thing that's surprises me, and it certainly surprises people when we talk to them, when they say, oh, right, you must be just based in some local vicinity, and yet we're able to say, well, actually, Mark's in California, I'm here in the Philippines, in Asia. We've teams based in Israel, Germany, the UK, like pretty much every country all over the world. And it blows my mind. People keep sort of being shocked to wonder, like, how can we operate so globally distributed and yet bring all these great talents to bear and teams that can work well together? So it's been extremely rewarding to see the power of actually creating a global team like this. And, that is one of our values, and it's one of our strengths, is that we now have talent all over the world, people building companies with experiences in local geos right through to global thinkers. And that's a huge, I think, competitive advantage for us, both in terms of the type of people we're attracting to the studio, but just the kind of culture it creates when you have a group from all over the world. And even on this live stream, I'm already seeing people dialing in from Germany, from different parts of the world, already sort of sharing a few comments and enjoying our comments, like unicorn parties being over. So yeah, we love hearing that sort of types of statements. Yeah. So just to then, people are probably thinking, right, like you're now, or we're now, you're sort of looking for a chief technology officer and a chief product officer. And for many people, they're probably going, well, hang on a sec, surely, you would have started with those people in the group. But let's, talk a little bit, about, why we actually didn't necessarily need those roles to start, and why they've sort of become top of mind for us now, especially as we go into this sort of next phase of growth for the business.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think we always knew that we're trying to build a world-class team, and so there's a bunch of key roles at the top that we're trying to fill. But there's a few that we knew we could fill when we found the right person. It wasn't about filling it at the right time; it was the right person. And at least marketing and product is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I've done my whole life. And I also knew it was going to be hard for whoever who came into that role, that they had to be not beaten up by me every single day, and we had to they need to stretch me in ways, not the other way. So we weren't rushing on product and marketing, and you got a product, big background as well. So we had a lot of that in the team. I think we had a lot of technology in the original founding team, and a lot of our angel investors are just some world-class product and technologists. So we had this kind of unfair ability to tap into our stakeholders and really solve a lot of problems. And then each one of our companies have technology strength. That's one of the first things you're trying to fill for. So I think when you think of CPO and CTO at the studio, it's almost indicative of you getting to a certain level of momentum, right? That you now have a big enough portfolio and you have enough vision and dreams of where you're trying to go, that you need someone to kind of fill that glue. So we probably would have pulled the trigger on those two roles a year ago if the right person walked in the door. But now it's the time where it's top of mind with the velocity, the speed, the resources, everything we're trying to create, that now it's going to become someone didn't walk in the door. It's time for us to go hunt the person down, find them where they're at, convince them to join this crazy journey. And we've had some really great conversations with some awesome people. So we're, since it's a fun part of the process is seeing how people tackle the problem, what sticks out to them, how they would unpack it, and questions they ask. I mean, it always makes us better regardless of the outcome.
Right. And I think this is a good point to sort of talk a little bit about, what's going to be the type of characteristics that is going to help someone be part of this team and help us succeed. Right. And, I certainly, speaking from my own perspective, when, the notion of doing a studio when we met over 2.5 years ago now, the thing about the opportunity of being able to apply expertise to work in companies in parallel in multiple different domains simultaneously, that is such an appealing characteristic, I think, of actually this type of work. Many of us, as we've sort of been entrepreneurs, is you get to sort of work on one business on a time in sort of sequence, and those sequences can often be years that you're focused on just one domain or one business within that domain. Where I think for me, one of the most joyous parts actually about this is that you get, if you're interested in many different technologies and the impact it's having in the world, if you're excited about understanding different domains and working with people who are really, really deep in these sort of domains, where you can help them actually pull them out of it sometimes and cross connect the dots from what we see across our portfolio. But I think that's sort of one of these real attributes, I think, for people who are going to participate in the company is thinking about lots of different domains, lots of different companies in parallel, and a chance to sort of dive in and help each one of them succeed is definitely, I think, one of the big upsides and exciting parts about doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I joke that I created it to be a playground for my ADHD. And so I hope that's why a lot of people are being attracted to it. I mean, for me, it's the best part of this role and this whole studio is just the amount of diversity of ideas, concepts, people, problems that we get to dive into in a given day. But for me, I get the gratifying effect of seeing something come to life, not just talking about it. And so it gets those combined components of it stretches your thinking, but then you get to see the reward of things coming to life. So I think, one of the characteristics definitely is something along those lines. I remember, we were really close to a CFO candidate not too long ago, and I was starting to feel this friction because a lot of the conversations were pointing out things that were going to be challenges for us to overcome. And just the slight nuance of the phrasing was a lot of things I was going to have to solve, not we. And, I've said from the beginning that this is an irrational, goal that we've set out for. And, you shouldn't be on this ride if that doesn't turn you on. But I've always known that there's 300 something things that we have to solve for that I can see within my vision. But that might seem overwhelming, but I have a pretty good idea of the 12 to 14 we have to solve this year. And I have a pretty good idea of the 12 to 14 that we have to solve the year after. And all 300, none of them scare me, and they actually get me out of bed. So I think you need to have that characteristic. And so back to the CFO story, it pained me because I really needed that role and I liked the candidate, but there was something wrong with the nuance of the language. And we decided to walk away from that candidate. And in desperation, I reached out to my network. And serendipity, the next day I was talking to our CFO now, Greg Lovett, who's one of the best hires I've made in my career. But in the interview, after I got done giving my 2-hour pitch of what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do, I'm like, and what do you think? And he said, well, I'm probably a little bit whacked in the brain for this, but I see about 250 things you have to solve for that probably shouldn't get me excited, but it really, really gets me excited. And I can already think about ways we can solve this. And just the way he embraced it, the excitement of all the challenges ahead, but the we language from literally the first hour, I think is important.
Yeah, no, it's massive, but it also reminds me of another really important characteristic that you're sort of saying is like this ability to actually take action and pick things up and run with them. And when the window's broken, it's great to point it out, but like, how are we going to pick that up and run with it and solve it? And I think that's one of the things that's so important, especially for both of these types of roles, right? Someone is going to have lots of ideas coming at them about potential businesses and what can we do quickly and at speed to sort of test if that's a great idea or not, or what are the smallest things we can do to make progress, or great technologies that emerge every single day, but yet how do we get our hands on them and play with them and find out actually what they really mean quickly. And I think that's a huge part about this role of it's great to be able to pontificate and think about and think deeply, think wide, but focus and then actually take action really fast is sort of really, really important. And it's interesting as well. We have a comment here from Matthew saying it sounds like you're looking for someone who can integrate and innovate across business concepts. Curious to some of your reaction to that.
Yeah, I think I like that question, but what triggered something else I was thinking, and it highlights why I wanted to say it. I think the importance of these roles is this. I would just call it leadership, and leadership is implied across almost any role you hire at a senior level, but some are more important than others, right? So in a chief legal officer, you could have chief legal officer of the studio, but you're not going to have legal teams in every NUCO. So they don't have to manage a bunch of different personalities and cultivate them and mentor them, because then you have a challenge of, as a leader, I need you to be decisive, but I can't have you overpower the teams. And yet I can't let you be a therapist watching them come up with whatever they come up with. Like, there's got to be this perfect blend, right? But you don't have that problem with legal officer. Like, everything goes to one person. That person solves it as much as possible. You're not going to have a bunch of legal teams. But in product and technology, you're going to have everything every NUCO is going to have is a product person and technology person, right? Or team. So the role of the CPO and CTO is like this, getting this right balance of being decisive and being visionary so we can move as fast as we want without overpowering the teams with their own ideas and concepts, and yet stimulating and bringing the best out of people without becoming consultant, right?
Yeah, like it's fun to sort of like play around with all these different aspects, right? And like I think one of the things that always strikes me is that like a lot of the people in the studio are natural tinkerers as well, right? Like one of the things we see a lot of the teams doing at the moment is naturally as a new AI tool comes out, people are just picking them up every week, playing with them, seeing what their utility is, how we can use them both already in the studio with some of the problems we have, or are they building blocks for companies that we could create and innovate even faster? And I think that's sort of a really healthy sort of part of the culture that's emerging is you have people naturally doing this type of ticking around with things or hacking around with things. And, figuring out what they are and twisting dials and then sharing that back with people to say, hey, this is an interesting example of something that I've found this week that could be leveraged across our different businesses. Whether it's a simple example of Min in our Idea Lab today was sharing a tool that he found that can look at podcasts and automatically synthesize them into social content, potentially that can be reused. And instantly, thinking in our studio where we've got a lot of companies and people do a lot of podcasts and events, how do we turn that into content that we can reuse is top of mind. And these are just sort of like little examples of saying, could we build companies there? Could this be a tool that makes the studio more productive? And I think these are just good little examples to give anecdotes around those kind of behaviors and how important they are to the contribution in building.
Yeah, you just touched on something I think is important to highlight for anybody watching the studio's journey, but anybody who's going to join it at any level. One of the things we did early on, which I think we're starting to feel the rewards of now, is from the very beginning we knew we wanted to have a kind of cross equity plan. So if you were part of one company, you're a part of every company. If you're in the studio, you earned equity in all the companies. If you're in one of the newcos, you earned equity in all the companies. And we were trying to do that for a few reasons. We're people first in our culture. And one of those things that means to me is making sure people are exposed to the upside potential of startups in a way that in the past we're usually locked to a few senior folks and investors, to be honest, right? We all love to watch the stories of Instagrams and Facebooks and stuff, but usually it doesn't trickle down to a junior developer. And so we wanted to change that. And the studio model is created in a way so that you don't have silos of companies or funds or industries. It's just one big family and everybody's a part of it. And what we were trying to do by that was not just, one, obviously be competitive and give people an opportunity that, they find exciting. But if we got it right, we would have this kind of cross, culture, this pollination of ideas, and then everybody would be doing something for the greater good, something bigger than us. And so what happens now, and you're seeing this evidence, is we have, strong technical teams and, 5, 6, 7 portfolio companies. We pulled together the office of the CTO, and people start talking, and they might say, hey, I used this. I solved this problem within my company yesterday. It's really cool. I'm not going to use it anymore. But what if we did this, this, and this? You could use it for your company, or we could turn another company. Like the ideas of like what else can come out of what we're doing every single day. That sounds really obvious to folks, but in every other financial structure, you don't have that happen because you're only focusing on your one NUCO. And the studio environment is there's no bad ideas. Even the Idea Lab, is going to have a shelves full of ideas that might be half baked, and their time will come when they come. And that's the exciting thing about this equity structure for investors and for employees is that you're always just building more and more momentum for the future. And, you don't have to think in silos or in a serial kind of mode of companies. And so that's exciting. And I think it's exciting for both of these roles as well, is that every company you create, you're building artifacts that just make the next one a little bit better, a little bit faster. And you're doing this for the long haul.
Yeah, and it does show up, as you say, in just the way people work together, right? Even at the moment where we've had a group of technologists or technical leads in all the different NUCOs come together to share what they're working on, and you see people actively want to help one another. It doesn't feel like a burden on top of their already packed day job where they've got their own startups to build. They're thinking about elevating their learnings back to the studio level and sort of disseminating those back across the portfolio and building systems and structures to make the next set of companies that come down the pipe even stronger as well. And I think that, again, is such a great component that not only are our incentives designed in that way, it's just a natural behavior that a lot of the characters already involved in the studio exhibit. And I think especially like we would look for in people taking these roles to help keep building up the capability of this portfolio and our systems and structures to help us build companies even faster and at the kind of speed that we want to operate at.
Yeah, something interesting I've been reflecting on a few of these conversations where I've seen it play out. I'd almost say that's why some of the people are at the table. Like the comp aside, the role, the title, everything else, like it's not something they're being forced to do. It's something that's naturally, they're there for the community, right? They're there because they want to be in a room with other people that challenge them and stretch them in ways they couldn't on their own. And I think that's important because there's a lot of, loner mercenary type builders that'll do crazy stuff in a corner by the room faster than talking to any one of us, right? And there might be a role for them in the studio, but there is still this community kind of desire that I think is kind of consistent across our nobodies. The wanting to get to the best ideas and wanting to challenge each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So like this is, something that we're actively looking for right now at the moment, right? We're at a real interesting as ever juncture in every startup. It feels like every day is like another pivotal moment in the story. But we really are at, I think, this a really interesting inflection point. We've been through the sort of muck and bullets, if you will, of the beginning, getting the studio off the ground, starting in the garage, attracting a fantastic set of early stage investors and angel funders to get the business off the ground. We were able to expand that network to a great connection of over 900 people that have joined through the crowdfunding and given retail investors a chance to own a piece of this again, which is a unique innovation in the venture studio space, is to offer that as something we're all very proud of, that it was very difficult to do, but very proud to achieve that milestone. And now as we're moving into this sort of, let's call it the professional era, if you will, of investment, and a lot of fantastic entities interested in putting professional capital into the studio and set us up on this, great run to really focus on execution over the next couple of years. So this is a very, special sort of time to be in at the beginning of this. There's still so much to be shaped. There's so much opportunity to have agency, to influence that, to bring your skills to bear for anyone who joins at any level of the company. But I think specifically these roles where, you're going to have a chance to shape over 100 plus startups over the next 3 to 4 years is a really exciting opportunity. So what are some of the things that are top of mind for you as we go into this next sort of inflection point, if you will, that you're like, is keeping you awake and hopeful that the people that we're going to find for these roles are going to have a great opportunity to set the direction on and bring to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we've been defined by, at least in our goals and visions, but even if you look back at what we've accomplished in the last 3 years, we've always tried to define ourselves by speed and being aggressive. Now, living on the inside, there's times I feel like we move like molasses, and it's like watching a tree grow. It drives me nuts. But if you stop and you look backwards, you can still say, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. We are doing a lot with a little, and I'm proud of that. But this next couple of years for us, I mean, inflection point is cliche in the startup world, as you say, but we are at that point. We're just coming off a major milestone of the crowdfunding. We have more momentum in our portfolio and our team and our brand and our systems than ever before. I think the market being a little tumultuous right now is serendipitous for us, because I think that there's some really great opportunities for us to bring in teams and companies and other things that we might not have the opportunity to otherwise. But this inflection point is really now about this capital, which we knew we'd raise at the right time, and we feel like the right time is now, and we have the support there to do it. So we're super excited to bring in more capital. But no money ever made a startup work on its own, right? The startup graveyard is full of billion-dollar raises, right? But what capital allows you to do is get more aggressive building a team. And as you build the team, you start to get these economies of scale, right? We've done a lot with a handful of executives working crazy hours and put their blood, sweat, and tears into this. But as you get that next wave of 3 or 4 other people in the team, you've exponentially grown your bandwidth and your ability to start to build those teams and move. Now, a lot of people raise too much money too early, build a big team, and they don't have their strategy figured out. I think one of the best parts about being lean and mean for us in the last couple of years, and we've just practiced what we preach, like we've learned a lot of hard lessons on the cheap, right? They might have been cheap for physical or psychological, but they were cheap from the investor side. And now we're at a point where we can confidently scale, and we can confidently make some big bets on things. And so I think that's incredibly exciting, because of the velocity of what we're going to do literally in the next 3 to 6 months. I think even people inside feel the excitement of what we've done the last 3 years, but we're all internally going to look back 6 months from now and go, wow, that it's been a rocket ship in terms of us shifting gears. And it's speed, it's velocity, it's people. I always say what makes companies work will be, resources, because it holds a whole bunch of things. Resources are people, capital, everything else. But resources, strategy, and people. That's it. Because you could say execution, but I think people and strategy is execution, and sometimes resources hold that up, right? So if you have those three things right, sky's the limit. And I feel that the blood, pain, sweat, and tears we've gone through to this point, I always say you want to pour in rocket fuel when something is ready for it. I always say give the machine gun to a guy who took out the enemy position with a knife in his teeth. Like we've definitely crawled up the mountain with a knife in our teeth. So we're looking forward to having more resources behind us.
Well, in the if the good old analogies, Ben's here asking, so you're the commandos to infantry phase transition. People may not notice that you have a background in special forces. So, tell how does that resonate for you in terms of this idea of how we are trying to operate and make these sort of bold moves, if you will, with them people being very innovative, using the skills, the opportunities, the resources, somewhat limited if they have been to hand, but the great results they've achieved.
Yeah, I don't think I realized as much in my career until even this journey how much my early military days had affected me. I was fortunate enough to be a part of special operations teams and work with some of the best. And some of the things that make that work is you're really trying to empower small teams to be fairly decisive, and you expect them to be cut off from, main leadership lines. And what you need them to understand is, how do we operate? What are you trying to accomplish? What are your parameters? And everywhere in between, you figure it out. Right. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but that was like startup training,
Yeah.
And by the way, if you fail, we don't know who you are. And, so I think it's important. I also think some of the things that comes from, that type of culture from the military is, and it's more of a special ops kind of military, but it's really about the mutual trust, right? People have heard me say this thing that we operate at the speed of trust. And that means you've got each other's back. There's gonna be days you're at your best, there'll be days that you're at your worst, but at the end of the day, you're there to cover each other on those bad days. At the end of the day, you have high expectations from each other. You can hold each other accountable, but at the end of the day, you're never looking over your shoulder thinking someone's going to stab you in the back. That doesn't work at that level. You have to have really a familial group of brothers and sisters, right? And I think that that's something that makes the best startups work. I don't think you see that very often in big corporates, which is why you lose some of that mojo. You can see it in small teams and corporates, but I think that our goal is to never get too big corporate, right? Our goal is to always keep that kind of mojo at the team level. And you'll see that within the studio and the individual teams, but you'll see it in the newcos, and we'll be fighting for that culture as long as possible. And I think that the international diversity of us and the time zones and everything is also creating that. By design, you don't have a choice. You have to empower people to do stuff when you're sleeping, right? And you have to trust them to advance stuff and make decisions with or without you. And so I think that's something, especially as resources and the leadership team grows, we get to do more aggressively, and I'm excited for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the special parts about why you would want to be part of a team is that there's great people there to challenge you, to hold you accountable, but to actually have camaraderie between one another to actually get there. And that's definitely been one of the standout moments for me, and something I'm continuing and keen to keep seeing that we propagate throughout the business at all levels. So yeah, look, we've got lots of people on here. Tiffany, another one of the fantastic members of our team, operating a knife in her mouth and her one hand tied behind her back, and yet she still gets lots of stuff done. Tiffany's our chief of staff and VP of operations, and this is just some of the fun that we all have in this job. Like, if it's not going to be fun, what's the hell point in doing this as well, right? Like, we've a lot of hard things to solve. We have our hands tied behind our backs at times, but we can still make it an enjoyable experience, which is a great sign of, again, a healthy, vibrant culture. And I think we continue to sort of celebrate that and celebrate all the different people and backgrounds and areas of the world that people have come from in this studio and will continue to come from. I think is another special moment for us as well. So in closing then, Mark, really, we'll obviously share if people are interested to look at these roles, by all means, if you go to nobodystudios.com/jobs, you'll see all the opportunities that are out there, not just the current focus of this session, which has been around our chief and product technology officers. There's lots of help that we're going to need to make this become the best business that we want and believe it to be. And so for yourself, is there any sort of closing thoughts and things you'd like to share with people who have joined us today and might be willing to share not only the opportunities we have now, but with people in their network that should watch this?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good thing to come back to some of our core values. And I've been saying this a few times over the years, but people ask me a lot why we're called Nobody Studios, right? And there's actually a few backstories behind that, so you might have to get me over a soda pop someday. But one of the biggest reasons is we said that what we're trying to accomplish is always going to be bigger than one person, right? And therefore we were going to be defined by the types of people we could attract to the journey, right? We truly believe that that our strength and our vision and our irrational goals will become more and more realistic as we attracted special people to the journey. And Nobody Studios is meant to be indicative of, hopefully we're all badasses. Now check your ego at the door and let's get to work and have fun, right? And I think that's important because anybody coming in, probably the right candidate could go off and do their own studio, or maybe they've thought about it, or maybe they already have their own studio, right? I think if it were me walking in the door for one of these roles, I'd want to know that the studio has some momentum and has, we got some passionate, strong opinions about certain things. You're still part of a core team that you get to help craft everything moving forward. And I think that's what I would be asking if I was walking in. So I think one is just the nature of who we are and how we try to operate, but also the stage where we're at. This is still a thrilling early stage opportunity for the right person.
Yeah, right on. And I think, like you say, the best time to join a studio is pretty much today. Like where we're going, where we've been. Just a long way to go ahead, and I think that's something to really emphasize is, we might have been at this for a couple of years, but I think we're all thinking about this in terms of decades, and this being the thing that we'll do for potentially the rest of our lives if we get this created the way we want. As you say, you wanted to create a playground for yourself, and I think for many people that's what we're all trying to create, an amusement park that we're happy to visit every day.
Yep.
And add new rides to it and change it up and keep seeing these businesses grow and succeed and blossom on their own, for a new set of businesses and technologies to arrive into the studio. And I think that's one of the most fascinating parts of this model, if you will, is that, there's always going to be technology innovations. There's always going to be new ways to solve old problems. There's going to be skills and techniques that we've already learned that help us sort of have a little unfair advantages in domains that we've been in before. And I think just the culmination of that insight and then the new opportunities that arrive, and to be with a team that you're working with on a regular basis to go after those opportunities, I think is a really special and unique sort of set of characteristics that we've got in front of us here at Nobody, and definitely something that excites me and keeps me sort of jumping up, whether it's midnight meetings or early morning calls like you're taking today, Mark, in California, right? Like this is what it's all been fun about working in this type of model and globally distributed group.
Yep. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on board too, Barry, and you stretch me in ways and challenge me in ways. And I also just appreciated, meeting someone from scratch. We had a warm introduction in the middle, but to build such a friendship and relationship along the way has been a special part of this and indicative of what we're trying to do here. And so, I think we keep getting that right. Nothing can stop us. So.
Right on. So what we'd encourage everybody, if you're interested and want to learn more, please go and check out nobodystudios.com/jobs. You'll see all the open roles that we have across the entire studio. If you've been inspired, please, by all means, reach out, share your details with us. Maybe even if somebody in your network that you think would love this, again, please share this live stream with them or the opportunities. We're looking forward to hopefully meeting all of you and hopefully more of you even joining the studio as we go forward. So Mark, thanks for joining. I know you're getting packed up to fly off to Europe and meet more of our nobodies across Europe over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, we'll look forward to catching everybody live on these live streams over the next couple of weeks, months, and years ahead.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.